Some books become classics, most disappear. And then there's the rare ones, the ones that are celebrated upon release and then slip through the cracks of history. Kem Nunn's Tapping the Source is one of those books. This was originally published in 1984, and it was shortlisted for a bunch of awards. It won a California Book Award. One critic called it the great American novel. It inspired the movie Point Break. And yet today, almost nobody even talks about this book. But this novel, with its sun, its surfing, and its brutal violence, might just be the most important crime story that you've never read. Let me tell you why this forgotten classic deserves a comeback. Tapping the Source is about Ike, a 19-year-old who up until this point has spent his entire life living in the desert of California. He lives with his uncle and his grandmother after his mom abandoned him and his older sister. His older sister eventually runs away and leaves him alone with them. And he's just kind of floating through life, really unhappy with everything, until a stranger shows up one day and tells him that his sister was down in Huntington Beach, California, took a trip with these 4 guys, and they came back and his sister didn't. Armed with just the list of names, Ike packs up, moves to Huntington Beach, California, in search of his sister and finding out if she's alive or if these people killed her. Once he gets there, he is just inundated with motorcycle gangs, surf gangs, and just this entire world that he's got no idea how to navigate. He's got this list of names, but he doesn't know who he can trust, whether or not he can mention these names to people, and he's really just trying to find his footing in a world that is so vastly different from the small town desert he grew up in. It has the noir aspects, it has the loner going up against something much bigger than himself. In Ike's case, he's looking for his sister, and he doesn't know how to go about this in any way whatsoever. And it also has that archetype of getting in way too deep and not realizing just how deep you are into the seedy underbelly until there's no chance for you to escape, and then you're left trying to navigate this unwinnable situation. But what it does really amazingly is it flips so much of that noir archetype on its head. When you think of noir, and we won't talk about, the subgenres of noir, but when you think of noir, usually you're thinking rainy streets, foggy nights, it's 2 a.m. in the morning, and you're in a dark alley, and some crimes are committing, and that's what really brings to mind. You got the fedoras and the overcoats. All of that's thrown to the side here. So much of this book and so much of the violence in this book take place during the day. There's beatdowns in broad daylight on piers. There's bar brawls at 2 p.m. with cops breaking it up. None of this is really taking place at night. You have the desert and the sun there. You have, going surfing at 6 a.m. when the sun's coming up, and these magnificent sun rises and magnificent sunsets that really frame this book. And it's really interesting how it takes that noir archetype, throws it to the side, and builds something completely new at this point. But what's really incredible about this book is how magnificent Kem Nunn's writing is. This is his debut novel, and it reads and it feels like somebody who has 5 or 6 novels under their belt at this point. You really don't get the feeling that this is a debut novel where they're trying to jam every idea they've ever had into their first book. In his writing and his sentence structure and the way he's able to evoke feelings in you and the way he's able to just paint these beautiful landscape pictures is incredible. And it's not just thrills and the violence to keep you hooked from page to page or chapter to chapter. This is really about the California dream gone bad, or on a grander scale, the American dream gone bad. And speaking of California, California is its own character. The landscape plays such a big role in this, but also the desert itself is its own character and the suppressing of Ike and his family up until that point. The ocean is its own beautiful character that really gets into the heart of nature, and he uses the oil wells as well, driving through California at night and really kind of seeing what the oil wells are doing to the earth and the world, and how there can be something so beautiful, and then a mile away from the ocean is just these ugly oil drills that are drilling and just polluting the world. But what makes Tapping the Source so incredible, such an amazing book, is the themes. and the theme of identity that runs through this book, whether it be Ike's parents, Ike's grandparents, Ike himself, his sister, the friends and the foes that he meets in Huntington Beach, so much of this is just grounded on identity. And there's the hidden identities that people may have. There is not even knowing what your identity is. There's trying to find your own identity, losing yourself, ultimately trying to find who you're meant to be as a person. And it's not just a coming of age story for Ike going through this at 19 years old. It's really a story of self-actualization. And it's not just for the characters, but self-actualization for yourself. It makes you look inward at yourself. The darkness in the characters, the darkness within yourself, the parts that maybe you know are there but you try to hide from other people. It really makes you look at these aspects and consider these aspects and recognize, are these parts of the human experience? The writing is absolutely top notch. Again, I can't believe this is a debut novel by somebody. At times, it gets to this meditative state, with these beautiful descriptions, like I said, of the land, which really helps make it its own character. And other times, the writing is crisp, it's concise. There's a point in the book where Ike really starts going off the deep end, and he gets really into these hedonistic ways with the sex and drugs. And the writing changes with that as well. We go from these long, beautiful descriptions of the scenery, these long contemplative moments within Ike's psyche, to these dark writing where it gets meaner, it gets shorter, and it just gets that much more harsh, the writing mirroring what Ike's going through at this point. This is a book I wish I read 20 years ago. I could have easily become obsessed with this book when I was 18, 19, 20 years old. Unfortunately, like I said, nobody was talking about this after it first came out. It's a real shame. There's a lot to unpack here, and I would have loved to have been able to read this then, and then read this every 5 years or so going through life, and seeing how my perspective and my thoughts about these characters change as I age, because so much of it is about that identity and finding yourself. And seeing if my thoughts and views for Ike now would have been different if I had read this when I was 18 and 19 years old. I might have identified with Ike a bit more at that age, where I came from a small town and eventually moved to a bigger city that was a lot different from where I lived. Would I have identified with him? Would I have had more empathy for him? Would I have had more caring for him? Would I have identified with some of the older mentor people that he meets at the beginning? Or would I only recognize, some sort of connection with them now as I'm older and I'm in my 40s? It would have been really cool to have been able to do that. So, take my word, this is a book you definitely want to check out. It's definitely worth reading at any point in life, but if you're younger, check this out as soon as you can and see if you connect with the story of Ike. But I want to get into why I think this book deserves a comeback. This book still feels fresh. The violence, the paranoia, and the dream of escape that Ike has in this book all resonate still today. I read this after reading 3 straight Jordan Harper books that were all written from 2018 to 2023. And a lot of the themes that Jordan Harper is using in these new rural noir, hard-boiled books that he's writing are all here and tapping the source from 1984. I'm not saying that he invented them, but these themes that still resonate with people today are in this. This didn't feel dated. This didn't feel aged. This was the birth of surf noir, a very niche subgenre of the noir genre as a whole, in which it's mostly Nunn, Don Winslow's written a few, and there's a few other scattered books. It's not a huge genre. But when you look at things like rural noir, you look at southern noir, you look at Appalachian noir, whatever you want to call that, all these other place-based noir crime fiction that is very relevant today, that's really putting people on the map. This book fits right in with that. Instead of taking place in Texas, instead of taking place in Virginia, we are looking at something taking place in California and dealing with those same aspects, just putting it in a different place. I think it would fit in really well with this current rise of all these subgenres of noir coming up. So, if you enjoyed the movie Point Break, if you enjoy authors like Ron Rash, S.A. Cosby, Attica Locke, like I mentioned, Jordan Harper. You owe it to yourself to check out Tapping the Source. Some books are forgotten classics, but rediscovering them might be one of the best parts of being a reader. I want to know, what are the forgotten classics sitting on your shelf? Drop them in the comments. I'd love to get my next book from you. As always, thank you for stopping by the back porch. I'm Matt, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like, dropping a comment, and if you want more books that are dealing with crime, noir, thrillers, or even horror, consider subscribing. I would love to get more people to understand how great Tapping the Source is, and doing those things would help this video reach more people. All right, I'll see you guys next week.